The shipment arrived during the quietest hour of the station's artificial morning, when the wide corridors of Meridian Trade Hub were still mostly empty, and the stars beyond its panoramic windows glowed like scattered frost. Oliver preferred working at this time. Fewer customs officers asking questions, fewer merchants trying to negotiate discounts on relics that were older than their planets. Just him, the crates, and whatever piece of the galaxy someone had decided to sell. He sipped his coffee while the cargo drone slid a narrow container onto the inspection table. The drone chirped politely and hovered there, as if expecting praise. "You did great," Oliver told it. The drone beeped again, satisfied, and floated away. Oliver leaned over the crate and scanned the shipping manifest projected above it. The sender was listed as a cultural exchange delegation from the Lyrian Commonwealth, a civilization humanity had only recently started trading with. According to the description, the container held ceremonial artifacts, jewelry mostly. He rubbed his hands together. Jewelry meant value. Value meant someone would pay a ridiculous amount of credits for it. The crate opened with a soft, mechanical sigh, revealing several velvet-lined compartments. Inside rested objects that glimmered faintly in the station lights, bracelets made of translucent crystal, delicate chains that seemed to shift color when viewed from different angles, and small metal rings etched with impossibly fine patterns. Oliver whistled. "Not bad for a Tuesday." He activated the inspection scanner, hovering above the table. A blue beam swept slowly over the artifacts, recording molecular composition, energy signatures, and possible explosive tendencies. Experience had taught him that alien jewelry occasionally did interesting things like emit radiation, summon holographic animals, or once release a cloud of extremely judgmental spores. The scanner hummed reassuringly. Nothing dangerous. Oliver picked up one of the rings between two fingers. It was elegant, formed from a smooth alloy that reflected light in soft shades of silver and pale blue. Tiny geometric symbols ran along the inside band. "Probably ceremonial," he murmured. He rotated it under the light. The metal felt warm, despite sitting in a crate for who knew how long. Curiosity was, unfortunately, Oliver's most consistent personality trait. "Well," he said to the empty room, "no one ever learned anything by not doing mildly irresponsible things." He slipped the ring onto his finger. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the ring pulsed. A faint glow rippled across its surface, spreading like liquid light. Oliver froze, staring at his hand. The scanner immediately began screaming, not metaphorically. The machine produced a series of alarm tones so dramatic that Oliver instinctively looked around for a fire. "Okay," he said calmly, "that seems unnecessary." The ring grew warmer, the glow intensifying until thin lines of light traced across the engraved symbols. They rearranged themselves, forming a pattern that definitely had not been there a moment ago. Oliver tried to pull the ring off. It did not move. "Interesting," he said. He tried again. Still nothing. The scanner projected a warning across the air. "Biological bond detected." Oliver blinked. "What biological bond?" The station's central computer chimed politely over the intercom. "Attention! Diplomatic protocol alert. Unauthorized activation of cultural artifact detected in Cargo Bay 7. Oliver looked around. That seems like a strong reaction. He wiggled the ring again. It remained stubbornly attached, glowing faintly like it had suddenly decided to become extremely important. "All right," he told his hand. "You've had your fun. Let's stop glowing now." The ring ignored him. Instead, it produced a soft, melodic tone, almost like a tiny bell. Oliver sighed. "You're not going to explode, are you?" Another chime echoed through the cargo bay as security doors slid open at the far end of the room. Two station officers stepped inside, followed by a small hovering diplomatic drone that projected a glowing symbol Oliver didn't recognize. The officers stopped when they saw him standing beside the open crate. One of them pointed at his hand. "Sir," the officer said slowly, "why is that artifact active?" Oliver raised the glowing ring. "I was hoping you could tell me." The diplomatic drone drifted closer, scanning the ring. Its lights flickered rapidly. A moment later, the drone emitted a soft mechanical gasp, which was impressive because it did not technically have lungs. "Cultural alert," the drone announced. "Bonding artifact confirmed." Oliver frowned. Bonding with what? The drone rotated slightly and projected a holographic message into the air. The translation appeared instantly. Sacred Lyrian bonding ring activated. Legal union initiated. Oliver stared at the text, then at the ring, then back at the hologram. I'm sorry, he said slowly. What? Across the station, several floors above the cargo bay, Ambassador Nira paused mid-sentence while speaking with the diplomatic council. A faint pulse of light spread across the ring she had worn for years, a ring that had never once activated. Her long ears tilted slightly as the glow intensified. The room fell silent. Nira slowly looked down at her hand. Then she sighed. Somewhere on the station, apparently, someone had just married her. Oliver had been escorted through 3 corridors, 2 security checkpoints, and 1 hallway decorated entirely with diplomatic flags before anyone explained why the glowing ring on his finger had suddenly become the most important object on the station. Unfortunately, the explanations did not make things better. So, Oliver said slowly as the escort officers guided him down another curved corridor, just to confirm, I put on a ring, and now there's a diplomatic alert? Neither officer answered. That seems like an overreaction, Oliver added. Still nothing. Oliver glanced down at the ring again. It had stopped pulsing quite so dramatically, but it continued to glow with a faint silver-blue light, like it was quietly proud of itself. He tried twisting it again. The ring did not move. All right, he muttered to it. You win. The corridor ended at a set of tall doors made from dark metallic glass. A hovering diplomatic drone floated beside them, projecting an official insignia Oliver vaguely recognized from the Lyrian Commonwealth. The drone rotated toward him. Artifact holder identified, it announced calmly. Artifact holder? Oliver repeated. That sounds suspiciously like something that's about to become my problem. The doors slid open. The room beyond was large and quiet, filled with smooth white walls and a long circular table where several officials sat watching him with expressions ranging from confused to extremely concerned. Oliver gave them a small wave. Hello. No one waved back. At the far end of the room stood a woman. At first glance, she looked human, though taller than most people Oliver knew. Her posture was calm and perfectly balanced, like someone who had spent her entire life standing in rooms where important decisions happened. Her dark hair fell smoothly over her shoulders, and her eyes held the steady focus of someone used to observing everything. But what immediately caught Oliver's attention were her ears. They were long and elegant, extending slightly behind her head in smooth, graceful curves. Alien. Oliver blinked once, then twice. Well, he said quietly to himself, this seems significant. The woman stepped forward. Her gaze moved calmly from Oliver's face to the glowing ring on his finger. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Oliver lifted his hand slightly. So, he said, offering a nervous smile. Funny story. A faint glow flickered across the ring on her own hand. The room became even quieter. One of the council members cleared his throat. Ambassador Nira, he said carefully, the bonding artifact has clearly activated. Oliver's smile faded. Bonding artifact? The ambassador continued watching him with a calm expression that Oliver suspected required a heroic amount of patience. Yes, she said. Her voice was smooth and steady, though there was the faintest hint of something tired beneath it. Oliver gestured weakly toward the ring. Is this the kind of bonding artifact that, bonds things? Yes. That feels like a yes I should be worried about. A different council member leaned forward. For clarification, the man said, adjusting a data pad, did you knowingly activate the Lyrian ceremonial ring? Oliver blinked. I thought it was decorative. The entire table of diplomats stared at him. One of them whispered something in a language Oliver didn't understand. He pointed at the open crate image displayed on the holographic screen. It was sitting in a velvet box, Oliver explained. Things in velvet boxes usually mean valuable jewelry, not intergalactic marriage device. The room remained silent. Oliver looked back at Ambassador Nira. She had not taken her eyes off the ring. He cleared his throat. So, what exactly did I activate? The ambassador spoke calmly. In my culture, she said, that ring is not jewelry. Oliver nodded slowly. I'm starting to suspect that. It is a sacred bonding instrument. Oliver waited. She continued. When it is placed upon a hand, it recognizes the individual's biological pattern. If the ring's counterpart detects the activation, she lifted her own hand slightly, revealing the faintly glowing band on her finger. The two individuals are legally bound in union. Oliver stared. Union. Yes. Like a partnership? In a sense. Oliver took a deep breath. I'm going to ask a very important follow-up question. The ambassador inclined her head slightly. What kind of union? There was a pause. Then she said very calmly, marriage. Oliver blinked. The council members waited. Oliver blinked again. Then he looked at the ring, then at Ambassador Nira, then back at the council table. Well, he said quietly, that seems like a lot of responsibility for something I put on during a coffee break. One of the diplomats leaned toward another and whispered urgently. Another official rubbed his forehead. Oliver raised his glowing hand. To be clear, he said, I did not intend to marry anyone today. Ambassador Nira folded her hands calmly. That is unfortunate. Unfortunate? Yes. Oliver pointed between them. Because of the marriage? Because, she replied, I was scheduled to marry someone else tomorrow. The room went silent again. Oliver slowly lowered his hand. Ah. He considered that information for a moment. Then he nodded. Well, he said, that does complicate things. For the next 20 minutes, Oliver discovered that diplomatic rooms were very quiet places when people were trying to decide how angry they were allowed to be. The council members spoke in low voices, occasionally glancing toward him as if he might suddenly do something else catastrophic with his hands. Oliver kept both hands visible on the table. I promise, he said at one point, I'm not touching anything else today. No one laughed. Ambassador Nira remained standing beside the council table, her posture straight and composed. If she was angry, she hid it with impressive discipline. The faint glow of the ring on her finger pulsed slowly, perfectly synchronized with the one on Oliver's hand. Oliver noticed that. That's unsettling, he muttered. The diplomatic drone floating nearby rotated slightly. Biometric synchronization confirmed. Please stop confirming thing, Oliver said. One of the council members finally looked up from his data tablet. Mr. Oliver Hale, the man said carefully, we are attempting to determine how the Lyrian bonding ring could have been activated outside of a ceremonial environment. Oliver raised his hand. I'm fairly confident the answer is curiosity. The man stared at him. Oliver shrugged. In my defense, no one labeled the box warning may cause marriage. A few council members exchanged tired looks. Ambassador Nira finally spoke again. The ring does not activate easily, she said calmly. It requires biological compatibility. Oliver frowned. Compatibility with what? With the bearer of the counterpart ring. She lifted her hand slightly again. Oliver looked between the two rings, glowing in perfect rhythm. So you're telling me, he said slowly, that out of the entire station, it picked me? Yes. That feels statistically rude. One of the advisors coughed quietly. Another council member leaned forward. The greater issue, the advisor said, is that according to Lyrian law, the activation constitutes a legally binding marriage. Oliver rubbed his forehead. Right. That part has been mentioned. The advisor continued. And the ring cannot be removed. Oliver froze. I'm sorry. The ring, the advisor repeated, cannot be removed without mutual consent and completion of a dissolution ritual. Oliver immediately grabbed the ring and pulled. It did not move. He twisted it. Nothing. He tried sliding it again. Still nothing. Of course, he sighed. The diplomatic drone beeped. Warning, forced removal attempts may trigger defensive bonding protocols. Oliver stopped instantly. Defensive bonding protocols sounds like something that ends with lasers. Correct. Oliver slowly released the ring. Good to know. Ambassador Nira watched him with an expression that was almost amused. Your caution is appreciated. Oliver leaned back in his chair. So, he said, gesturing vaguely at the glowing jewelry ruining his afternoon. What happens now? A council member adjusted his glasses. We must begin the annulment procedure. Great, Oliver said quickly. Let's do that immediately. There is a complication. Of course there is. The advisor tapped his tablet and projected a document into the air. Lyrian law requires that both bonded individuals remain within proximity during the dissolution preparation period. Oliver frowned. What kind of proximity? The drone answered before anyone else could. Within 8 meters. Oliver blinked. That's oddly specific. It ensures relational stability. Oliver leaned toward Ambassador Nira slightly. So we're roommates now? She tilted her head. That is not the correct word. Oliver pointed at the holographic document. It literally says, remain within 8 meters at all times. That's closer than most roommates. A faint smile almost appeared on her face. Your interpretation is creative. Oliver stood from his chair. Well, I guess we should test the distance rule. He walked toward the door. 5 steps later, the ring screamed. Not beeped, not chimed. Screamed. A high-pitched, furious alarm filled the room like an offended fire detector. Oliver jumped. What was that? The drone calmly reported, bonded partner distance threshold exceeded. Oliver immediately stepped back toward the table. The alarm stopped. He stared at the ring. You're kidding. The ring glowed innocently. Oliver pointed at it. That thing just yelled at me. Ambassador Nira folded her arms. In Lyrian culture, bonded partners are not expected to wander away from each other. Oliver rubbed his face. Well, your culture clearly never met artifact dealers with commitment issues. Several council members quietly pretended not to hear that. Oliver looked back at the ambassador. So until the ritual thing happens, yes, we're stuck within 8 meters of each other. Yes. Oliver sighed deeply. Fantastic. He looked around the council chamber. I accidentally got married this morning, he said. Then he pointed at the ring. And now I have a very judgmental bracelet telling me not to leave my wife. The drone corrected him. Ring. Oliver waved his hand. Emotionally, it's a bracelet. The diplomatic council eventually decided that arguing about the situation would not magically undo the glowing rings, which meant Oliver and Ambassador Nira were politely escorted out of the chamber together while several very stressed officials began preparing the so-called dissolution procedure. Oliver walked beside her through the long, curved hallway of the station, glancing down at the ring every few seconds as if it might suddenly decide to do something else dramatic. So, he said after a moment, just to confirm, this isn't the kind of marriage where I suddenly inherit political responsibilities, right? Nira walked calmly beside him, her long ears angled slightly backward as she observed the corridor ahead. That depends, she replied. Oliver stopped walking. That answer contains danger. She paused as well and turned slightly toward him. In Lyrian culture, she said, a bonded partner is expected to represent the household with dignity. Oliver blinked. Household? Yes, he pointed to himself. I live in a cargo apartment above a noodle machine. She considered that information for a moment. That may require adjustment. Oliver sighed and resumed walking. Great. My accidental marriage is already upgrading my living standards. They continued down the corridor. Station personnel occasionally passed by, some of them glancing curiously at the 2 glowing rings. Oliver noticed. Word travels fast on this station, he muttered. Nira did not seem surprised. Diplomatic incidents usually do. Oliver rubbed the back of his neck. Can we call it an incident? Incident sounds like someone spilled coffee on a treaty. This feels more like accidentally launching a rocket. A maintenance robot rolled past them and suddenly stopped. Its camera lens focused on their hands. The robot beeped politely. Congratulations on your union. Oliver stared at it. Even the robots know. Nira continued walking. The station network has already logged the bonding event. Oliver hurried to catch up with her. That's comforting. They reached a wide observation corridor where the outer wall of the station opened into a massive window. Beyond it, the deep black of space shimmered with distant stars, and several cargo ships drifted slowly around the docking ring. Oliver leaned against the railing. Well, he said, at least the view is nice for a sudden marriage. Nira stood beside him, her expression calm as she looked out at the stars. For my people, bonding ceremonies are usually held under open skies. Oliver glanced at the ceiling. Closest thing we have is artificial gravity and recycled oxygen. She studied the glowing ring on his hand. You truly did not know what it was? Oliver laughed quietly. If I had known it was a sacred alien marriage device, I would have put it back in the box very carefully and pretended I never saw it. He lifted his hand again. Most artifacts I handle either explode, sing, or release spores. Marriage wasn't on my usual list of hazards. Nira's lips curved slightly. That is an unusual occupational risk. Tell me about it. For a moment, they simply stood there watching a massive freighter glide slowly past the window. Oliver broke the silence. So this political marriage you mentioned earlier. Nira remained looking at the stars. It was arranged by my government. Romantic. It was strategic. Less romantic. She turned toward him slightly. The union would have strengthened several alliances. Oliver scratched his chin. And now that alliance is, what, canceled? In a sense, he pointed at the ring. Because of me. Yes. Oliver winced. That sounds like the kind of thing that causes diplomatic headaches. Nira studied him for a moment. It does. Are people on your planet angry right now? Some will be. Oliver sighed. Fantastic. He leaned back against the railing again. I came here this morning planning to catalog jewelry and eat noodles. And now? And now I might be responsible for upsetting an entire alien government. Nira tilted her head slightly. You are adjusting well. Oliver laughed. I am absolutely not adjusting well. He gestured toward the ring again. I'm still hoping this thing turns out to be a very elaborate joke. The ring glowed softly in response. Nira's gaze followed the faint pulse of light. Lyrian bonding rings respond to emotional resonance? Oliver slowly lowered his hand. Did it just react to sarcasm? Yes. That's dangerous. A small service drone floated past them, projecting a notification. Dissolution ritual preparation. Estimated time. 3 weeks. Oliver stared at the message. 3 weeks? Nira nodded. The officials from my homeworld must travel here. Oliver looked at her, then at the message again, then back at her. 3 weeks within 8 meters? Yes. Oliver exhaled slowly. Well, he said, on the bright side? She raised an eyebrow slightly. There is a bright side? Oliver shrugged. If we're going to be accidentally married for 3 weeks, we might as well learn each other's names properly. She looked at him. Ambassador Nira. He extended his hand. Oliver Hale. She glanced at the glowing ring connecting them. Then she shook his hand anyway. Yes, she said calmly. I am aware. The first morning of their accidental marriage began with a small but important discovery. The bonding ring had very strong opinions about distance, but it had absolutely no patience for sleep schedules. Oliver learned this when he woke up to a loud, offended humming sound directly beside his head. He groaned and opened one eye. The ceiling of his cargo apartment stared back at him. The humming continued. Oliver turned his head slightly and found the source of the noise. His ring was glowing, not softly, not politely, bright. He lifted his hand. Why are you yelling at me? He muttered. The ring responded by producing another annoyed tone. Oliver squinted at the clock on the wall. 6 in the morning. Too early, he told the ring. Everything is too early. The ring pulsed again. Then after a moment, the apartment door chimed. Oliver blinked. Oh no. He sat up slowly, staring at the door like it might explode. The door chimed again. He rubbed his face. Please tell me the door is not about to deliver my wife. The door slid open. Ambassador Nira stood there. She looked calm, composed, and fully awake. Oliver looked like someone who had been attacked by a blanket. Nira stepped inside. The ring indicated your proximity signal was weakening. Oliver gestured weakly toward the bed. I was asleep. The ring interprets inactivity as potential separation. Oliver stared at it. So it woke you up too? Yes. He pointed accusingly at the ring. This thing is a relationship alarm clock. Nira looked around the small apartment. The room contained a narrow bed, a cluttered desk covered in artifact scanners, and several shelves full of strange objects Oliver had never quite gotten around to selling. One shelf held a glowing cube that occasionally made humming sounds. Another held a crystal skull wearing a tiny hat. Nira examined the room quietly. This is where you live. Oliver leaned back against the wall. I did warn you about the noodle machine downstairs. She tilted her head slightly at the shelves. You collect unusual artifacts. I sell unusual artifacts. He pointed at the skull. That one refuses to leave. The skull made a faint clicking noise. Nira studied it. Is it sentient? Probably. She nodded calmly. That explains the hat. Oliver dragged a chair toward the small kitchen counter. Well, he said, since we're accidentally married, I guess I should offer you breakfast. What is breakfast? He opened the food processor and pressed a button. The machine hummed loudly and produced 2 steaming bowls of something vaguely edible. Noodles. She examined the bowl carefully. Is this a human ceremonial meal? No, Oliver said. This is the cheapest food on the station. Nira sat across from him and tasted the noodles cautiously. She paused. Then she took another bite. Oliver watched her. That's the look of someone discovering noodles for the first time. They are acceptable. That is the highest compliment noodles ever receive. They ate quietly for a few minutes. The ring pulsed faintly between them. Oliver noticed. Does it always glow like that? Yes. Is it judging us? In a sense. That's unsettling. Nira finished the bowl and set it aside. My people designed the bonding rings to monitor emotional harmony. Oliver stared at it. Emotional harmony. Yes. He lifted his hand again. So if I get annoyed, this thing knows? Yeah. What if I panic? It knows. What if I make a terrible joke? She looked at him calmly. It will survive. Oliver leaned back in his chair. Well, that's reassuring. A moment later, the ring pulsed brighter. Oliver frowned. Why did it do that? Nira looked at it. Then she looked at him. You appear relaxed. That triggered it? Yes. Oliver rubbed his forehead. So the ring thinks we're emotionally synchronized because we ate noodles? It is possible. That feels like a low standard for marriage. Nira's expression softened slightly. For many alliances in my culture, it would be. Oliver blinked. That was a joke. Yes. You made a joke. Yes. Oliver pointed at her. You're getting more dangerous. Nira stood and walked toward the shelf of artifacts. She picked up a small silver sphere. What is this? Oliver glanced over. Oh, that's a gravity marble. She raised an eyebrow. A what? He shrugged. It reverses gravity in a 2-meter radius for about 10 seconds. Nira immediately placed it back on the shelf. A wise decision, Oliver said. The ring pulsed again. Nira looked at it thoughtfully. The ring is adapting. Oliver sighed. Please tell me that doesn't mean it's getting stronger. It means it is recognizing our compatibility. Oliver froze. Compatibility? Yes. He slowly stood. Nira, yes. I would like to clarify something. She looked at him. I still plan to remove this ring. She nodded calmly. That remains the official plan. Oliver looked at the glowing band again, then back at her. Good. The ring pulsed warmly. Oliver sighed. Stop encouraging it. 3 weeks turned out to be a surprisingly short amount of time when a glowing alien ring refused to let 2 people wander more than 8 meters away from each other. Oliver discovered this on the 12th day, while standing inside his artifact shop and watching Ambassador Nira carefully inspect a floating display case full of strange objects. At this point, the station had mostly accepted the situation. A small sign now hung on the shop door. Accidental marriage tourists. Welcome. Oliver pointed at the sign. I would like to officially state that I did not put that there. Nira examined a small rotating crystal that projected miniature constellations into the air. It appears popular. Outside the shop window, 2 station visitors were taking pictures. Oliver sighed. I used to sell ancient artifacts. Now people come here to observe my personal disaster. Nira studied the constellation crystal. Disaster may be an exaggeration. Oliver leaned on the counter. I accidentally married a diplomat. That is correct. I disrupted an interplanetary alliance. Yes. And now my shop is a tourist attraction. Nira turned slightly toward him. Some businesses would consider that successful marketing. Oliver stared at her. You are enjoying this. A little. The ring pulsed faintly. Oliver noticed. It does that whenever you say something funny. The ring measures emotional synchronization. Yes, we've established it's very proud of our noodle-based relationship. A delivery drone floated through the door carrying a small metal crate. Oliver signed the data pad and opened it. Inside were several sleek, metallic devices with official Lyrian markings. He frowned. That doesn't look good. Nira walked closer. Those are ceremonial regulators. That sounds worse. She examined the devices. They are used during dissolution rituals. Oliver closed the crate slowly. So the annulment team is here. Yes. As if on cue, the station intercom chimed. Attention. Lyrian diplomatic delegation has arrived at docking ring 4. Oliver looked up at the ceiling. Well, that timing feels ominous. Nira remained calm, though her long ears angled slightly backward. They will begin preparing the ritual chamber. Oliver rubbed the back of his neck. So this is the part where we walk into a big room, say a few official words, and the ring finally lets go. Yes, he nodded. That sounds good. They stood quietly for a moment. Oliver realized something strange. Neither of them moved. He cleared his throat. So, when do we go? Soon. Soon is vague. The ritual will occur tomorrow. Oliver blinked. Tomorrow? Yes. He sat on the counter. Wow. Nira studied him. You appear surprised. I just realized something. What is that? I got used to this. She tilted her head slightly. The marriage? The chaos. He gestured vaguely around the shop. The glowing ring. The angry diplomats. The noodles. The gravity marble that keeps threatening to flip us upside down. Nira allowed a faint smile. You adjusted. Oliver looked down at the ring. It pulsed quietly like a slow heartbeat. I guess I did. Outside the window, a massive alien starship drifted slowly into the docking ring. Its silver hull shimmered with the distinctive architecture of the Lyrian Commonwealth. Oliver watched it arrive. That ship probably carries people who are very unhappy with me. Nira folded her hands calmly. Some will be. That's comforting. He looked back at her. You know what the weird part is? What? I don't regret putting the ring on. She studied his face carefully. Even after everything that happened? Especially after. The ring glowed brighter for a moment, Nira noticed. So did I. Oliver blinked. You did what? I do not regret the bonding. Oliver leaned back slightly. That feels like something we should unpack emotionally. Perhaps. The shop door opened suddenly. 3 tall Lyrian officials stepped inside, their robes marked with ceremonial symbols. Each of them had the same long, elegant ears as Nira, though their expressions were far less amused. The leader of the group looked directly at Oliver. Artifact dealer Oliver Hale? Oliver raised his hand slightly. That's me. The official's eyes moved to the glowing ring. The dissolution ritual has been prepared. Oliver nodded. Great. The official continued. Tomorrow both parties will confirm whether the bond is to be dissolved. Oliver glanced at Nira, then at the ring, then back at the official. Just hypothetically, he said carefully, what happens if someone changes their mind? The Lyrian officials exchanged brief looks. Then the leader answered, if both partners choose to maintain the bond. Oliver waited. The marriage becomes permanent. The room grew quiet. The ring pulsed again. This time neither Oliver nor Nira looked away from it. The ritual chamber aboard Meridian Trade Hub looked less like a courtroom and more like the inside of a quiet star temple. Tall crystalline pillars rose toward the curved ceiling, glowing faintly with soft blue light. Strange symbols moved slowly across the floor, like drifting constellations, forming a circular pattern where the ceremony would take place. Oliver stood at the edge of that circle, trying very hard not to feel like someone who had accidentally wandered into a very expensive alien wedding. Which technically he had. He looked down at the ring. It glowed gently, as it had every day for the past 3 weeks. All right, he muttered quietly. This is the part where we politely break up. Across the chamber, several Lyrian officials prepared the ritual instruments, small floating devices that projected streams of light into the air. Their robes shimmered with ceremonial markings, and their long ears remained perfectly still, the universal sign of very serious alien concentration. Oliver leaned slightly toward Nira, who stood beside him with her usual calm posture. "I feel like I should apologize again," he whispered. "You have apologized 12 times. 13 is a good number. You are forgiven." Oliver nodded thoughtfully. "Good." He paused. "Just to confirm, though, your people are not planning to imprison me after this, right?" Nira looked at him. "That was never proposed." "That's reassuring." The lead ritual official stepped forward into the circle. His voice echoed calmly through the chamber. "The bonding ring has joined two individuals through sacred activation. Today, the bonded pair will decide whether the union shall dissolve or endure." Oliver raised one finger. "Before we continue," he said carefully, "I would like to point out that this is still the most intense consequence I've ever experienced for touching a shiny object." One of the younger Lyrian attendants coughed quietly. Nira's lips twitched slightly. The official ignored the comment and continued. "Bonded partners must now stand within the circle." Oliver and Nira stepped forward together. The glowing symbols beneath their feet brightened. The ring pulsed. Oliver stared at it. "You are very dramatic," he whispered to it. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the ceremonial regulators floated around them, projecting thin streams of silver light that linked the two rings together like threads of energy. The official spoke again. "The dissolution ritual requires mutual agreement. Each partner must declare their intent." Oliver exhaled slowly. For the first time since this entire situation began, the room felt very quiet. He looked at Nira. She met his gaze calmly, though her long ears tilted slightly. Something Oliver had learned meant she was thinking carefully. 3 weeks ago, he had been cataloging jewelry in a cargo bay. Now he was standing in an alien ritual chamber, deciding whether to end a marriage he never meant to start. He cleared his throat. "Before we do this," he said, "I need to ask something." The official hesitated. "You may speak." Oliver turned toward Nira. "So, hypothetical question." She watched him patiently. "If someone accidentally married an ambassador?" The room waited, and then spent 3 weeks discovering that Ambassador is actually funny, surprisingly patient, and capable of surviving my cooking. A faint ripple of confusion moved through the Lyrian officials. Oliver scratched the back of his neck. "Would it be considered rude," he continued, "to ask if maybe the accident wasn't entirely a mistake?" The ring glowed brighter. Nira studied him. "You are reconsidering the dissolution." "I might be." He gestured toward the chamber. "Look, I understand the political complications. I understand your government probably expected a strategic alliance, not me. You underestimate your value." "That is very generous, but I sell artifacts next to a noodle machine." The ring pulsed again. Nira looked down at it. Then she looked back at Oliver. "For many years," she said quietly, "my future was decided by political arrangements." Oliver listened. "The ring removed that future." He nodded. "Accidentally." "Yes." She folded her hands calmly. "And during these past weeks, I discovered something unusual." "What's that?" "I was not unhappy." Oliver smiled faintly. "That makes two of us." The ritual chamber remained silent. The official cleared his throat. "The bonded pair must declare their decision." Oliver looked at Nira again. "Well," he said quietly, "what do you think?" She studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke clearly. "I choose to maintain the bond." The official stirred slightly. Oliver blinked. "Wait, you answered first." "You asked first." "That's not how negotiations usually work." The ring flared brightly. The official turned toward Oliver. "And you, Oliver Hale, do you accept the bond?" Oliver looked down at the glowing ring, then at the ambassador standing beside him. 3 weeks ago, he had been curious. Now he was something else. He laughed quietly. "Well," he said, "I guess this means I should start learning proper diplomatic etiquette." The official waited. Oliver raised his hand slightly. "I accept the bond." The ring erupted with warm light. The streams of silver energy dissolved into the air, and the ceremonial devices slowly powered down. The official nodded. "The union stands." Oliver exhaled slowly. Well, he said, that's definitely the most unexpected outcome of my career. Nira tilted her head slightly. You are adapting well. He looked at her. So, what happens now? She glanced toward the stars visible through the chamber's tall windows. My people will need to adjust their diplomatic expectations. Oliver nodded thoughtfully. Good luck with that. She turned back to him. And you will need to adjust to being the bonded partner of a Lyrian ambassador. He considered that. Well, he said, as long as the noodles remain acceptable. For the first time since the ceremony began, Nira laughed openly, and the ring glowed quietly between them, perfectly content with its work.